152, I think. Here we go. So, hi, everybody. Welcome back. We are here for another one of your questions about work. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, I'm Roy, and I'm a startup investor in the future of work. And I'm here with Kara, who is an investor in that area, among many, many others at Upfront. And one of the things that we spent some time talking about early in the pandemic is something that I want to return to, which is just the where of people will work and how they will work. And we were both just talking about our anticipation for the joy that will come when we're all able to do things we weren't able to do before. And so the question today, and we can just start riffing on it, is how do I help my team to thrive in a hybrid environment where some things are done at a distance remotely from home and some things are done together in person?
Yeah, I think it's the $64 trillion question. I think that what I've heard a lot from my friends, and in particular my friends who are parents, but a lot of them are sort of, I both am ready to go back and I'm deeply afraid to go back. It's like, there are things I really like about the way I'm working and being able to see my kids and be at home and exercise and trade NFTs.
Control over your daily life, like all that stuff. Like no more obligatory dinners or anything like that.
The flip side is, Roy, how many grownups that you're not related to or married to have you seen in like the last 6 months? Can you count them on a hand or two?
I've started to be able to do distanced outdoor walks, which feels okay, but way fewer than I would like to. And specifically my team, I think I've seen Lisa once. I think I've seen James once. I've seen Min once, and everybody else 0 times, I think.
So I think it's going to be a very high EQ return to work. So what would I do? I would just start.
That's delicious.
That's delicious, right? I just say it. You can interpret
it.
What
does that mean?
I hope it's a high. What I mean by that is if you're fortunate enough to work in a knowledge job that you can do kind of heavily over Zoom or video, which we have to acknowledge is a very, very privileged place.
We are fortunate people.
I think everybody realizes it's not this bright line of, okay, we're back in the office and we're back on airplanes and we're going to every board meeting in person. So I think everyone's going into this with the expectation of it's going to be gradual, right? Even when we're all vaccinated, we're still probably going to wear masks. We're still probably going to have smaller settings. We're still probably going to be very thoughtful and deliberate about how we spend time. So high EQ return to work is like, I think we all sort of there's this thing around if you're a CEO or you're running a firm, you should have the answers and you don't want to show weakness, right? And to some extent that's helpful, right? One random example I'd give is when you're negotiating an M&A transaction as a startup, 50% of the time they fall apart, right? Even if you want to do it. And the teams that bleed that through to the whole team, it's very hard to recover. So you kind of want to control what information moves forward versus back. I think this is one of those cases where it's the opposite, where no one has a policy yet, unless they've come out to say our policy is total flexibility, and they did that 6 months ago or a year ago. So I did high EQ is kind of start calling people.
Yeah.
What are you worried about? How do you want to do it? What are you missing? What do you want to do? And just listen and collect information. We haven't yet totally started doing that at Upfront, but VC's different because we all only spent time together on Mondays kind of anyway. And
we're like a field sales team or customer success team in a way. Yeah. We just come back together to compare, pipeline, if you will. But it is different. I love this notion of, it's going to happen in phases because none of us quite knows anything anymore. And I love this notion. A lot of people have talked about this being a period of just tons of experimentation. I love the notion of even before you do that, just having a paying attention period of just talking to the people on your team, observing how it's working. It reminds me a lot of that book Creativity Inc. by Ed Catmull about Pixar, where a lot of what he talks about is we had an intention and then we observed how it was working and then something didn't work. And then we created a new way to fix the thing that didn't work. And I kind of like that idea, especially for people who run teams or CEOs of admitting that you just don't know for a while and it's all going to be provisional for a little bit while we figure it out.
Yeah, for sure. I also think there's this element of we're not, we think about happiness as a goal, and maybe because, of our shared heritage, Roy, I don't really think of it.
I thought guilt was something I thought of as a goal.
I don't know. I think about like purpose now more as the goal. And then I do think about happiness, and people more. I think about people who give you energy and what gives you energy. But I always say, like, if you're happy 51% of the time, or you're purposeful more than 50% of the time, you probably have a good job. And the reason I bring that up is I just think when we all start figuring out our hybrid models, it's going to be, there's no perfect answer. And so we're all going to need to like experiment, but also then just like live in this new experiment and make it work for like the.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing new phrases emerging. Yesterday, I was talking to somebody who works at a company in which we invest, and he said, "Oh, our office is going to be our sprint center." Meaning you're going to come in and do sprint planning or execution on a sprint. And he's like, yeah, getting work done. I mean, I think I read this somewhere too, is getting work done remotely is way easier, but figuring out what work you need to do is way harder. And so I just think there's going to be that. And let me ask you, because you have, especially for a VC, but just for any human, a very wide range of situations you see, like including having started a soccer team, that you can't do certain aspects of that remotely, really. And so how are you seeing differences in what you guys are planning in terms of live events, or how the team will coordinate or practice or any of that stuff? If you can talk about it.
We
I'm not trying to pry.
We still hope soccer will be played as a team on a pitch.
Well, sure, yes, yeah, no VR soccer for you guys.
In a lot of ways, it's actually not as different as you would think. Angel City, which is essentially the my co-founder experience right now with our good friend Julie Ehrman, emerged as a completely virtual company, right? And so now we are building out.
When you started Angel City.
Yeah. So Angel City's never had a central office,
Sure.
But when we gather, we go to LAFC Stadium. It's kind of an inspiring office to go to. And it's just like the most fun thing I've done during COVID is wear 18 masks and stand at LAFC Stadium and kind of meet with the different community. I think we all see this though, whether it's for that company or boards I'm on or the like. Everyone getting on Zooms together and having more time in their day to do that is really good for communication. It's not as good for rapport building. So like where you have the rapport, so like you talk about the Sprint Center, I think every company might need like a rapport messiah.
Oh, I love that. Like of just, and you heard this from fully remote companies that sometimes when they would get everybody together, and there weren't that many of them before the fall, but they would get everybody together and be mostly just focused on hanging out. Of like, let's just have a good time. And, that when we get together, once a quarter as the Bloomberg Beta team, that's a large part of what it's all about. And yes, our shared co-founder, you may be maybe one of the only people or not the only person in the world with whom I share a co-founder. Our shared co-founder of Julie Ehrman, with whom, I started a video game company that she led. And now you two are doing, the first women's soccer team in LA. She had this definition of success, which I think is relevant here, which is she used to say success is if every week you feel like it's going slightly better than the previous week. And it sounds so simple, but then you think about it, it's like, if that does keep going, yeah, you are succeeding. And I kind of think that if the return to offices feels like that, that will be great in terms of whatever people want, purpose, happiness, pick your thing you're solving for. But I love that idea of just kind of taking it slow and observing it. So thank you, Kara.
Yeah. And I mean, the other quick thing is you're talking, I mean, so, I invest pretty heavily in like cyber and cloud companies these days. And there's one here in LA called OpenRaven I'm on the board of. And they did this thing where they were remote from the beginning. And they kind of focused on everyone being in the same time zone. And and then they actually overtly focused on making sure nobody saw each other one off, but doing every month getting together just for rapport building. And I had an incredible executive coach at one point in time who said, Kara, be overt when you're going in to talk to a colleague as to whether or not you're going in to get something accomplished and negotiate something, get an answer to something, or you're literally going in to just build rapport. Because if you don't sometimes just go in to build rapport, you don't get the right things accomplished. And so anyway, this company OpenRaven has been really intentional about how they do it. And I think like the most significant thing is that I do think we've all built like very deep relationships with portfolio companies and the boards we sit on and the teams we already know. And then there's been all of this exhaustion around meeting new companies and meeting VCs and the blood sport of fundraising. And I just hope we actually go back and spend like a few months just seeing all the people that
we
have.
know.
Yeah.
Definitely the part I'm most craving. I mean, I do this job because I like serving founders, and I miss seeing the ones who I get to work for in person or very limited experiences with it. All right. Well, that is today's This Is Not Advice. And it's not advice because we're not telling you what you should do. We're just giving you our perspectives. In this case, a particularly informed one from Kara. And we will be back tomorrow. And thank you, Kara. I would love to do this again.
Thank you, Roy.